The views expressed and opinions given by the individual hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Z-Talk Radio, its affiliates, or sponsors.
You're listening to the Dark Shadows Radio with your host, Al Warren, only on the Z-Talk Radio Network.
Thanks for being in the Dark Shadows with me. I'm Al Warren. Tonight we have Robbie Thomas. Now, Robbie Thomas is from Canada, and he's been a long-time book writer, he's a screenwriter, producer, and psychic criminal profile. He's created a new TV series for the Lamport and Sheppard Entertainment called Psychic Profiler. And we're going to talk about that, his books, and veryparanormal.com right after these words.
Introducing the Starbucks Flat White, crafted with 2 ristretto shots for bolder, caramelly espresso. Whole milk, steamed to a sweet, velvety microfoam. Delicately poured, so the espresso rises to the top. The perfect union of bold and sweet. Simplicity is its own artistry.
You can listen to us anytime, anywhere now. Download our free app now for the iPhone and iPad. Look for the Warren Exchange or House of Mystery app at the Apple App Store today.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, tail-wagging, backyard-hanging, and, of course, companionship.
And what breed would you say Satchmo is?
I'd have to go with maybe a lavish terrier-hound chihuahua-looking kind of mix.
Tremendous dog.
I'd also like to point out Satchmo's coloring, a white, gray, brown, black brindle, simply marvelous.
You know, it's such a treat to watch a dog like this.
Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance, so common with this group.
And finally, the loving face lick.
It's great how he just gets in there and, well, licks.
Fantastic. But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. He's a first-rate, grade-A, #1 nut.
Holy caffeine!
We need donuts and coffee, hot.
On the contrary, I'm extremely interested in what you have to say.
Throw me a frickin' bone here. I'm the boss. Need the info.
Welcome back, and tonight our guest is Robbie Thomas, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard of him from his various specials on, I would say, paranormal side. First of all, thank you for being on the show, Robbie.
No, thank you for having me. This is great.
So let's start with Robbie. Where did it all start for you getting into the what you do now? Like, was there a turning point in your younger life somewhere, or some event or happening, as we would say, that all of a sudden maybe woke you up to what you were going to be doing in the future?
Yeah, I went through to be a police officer twice. And the first time I went through to be a police officer, age 17, I went through all the testing and all the written work and what have you. Many candidates beat them out, and they were taking 3 auxiliaries at the time in my hometown of Sarnia. And went up to the chief of police office, signing the paperwork. I remember the chief grabbing the paperwork, Chief Cook, and he looked and he looked at the paperwork, and he had a great big grin on his face, and he says, "Son, you got to come back when you're 20 because you can be an auxiliary when you're 20, 21, and becoming a police officer." I was only 17, so I was hired and fired in the same day. But, you know, the love of becoming a police officer is what I really wanted to do. So I waited to grow up a little bit more and kept doing police testing when I was 19, 20, 21. And then I was hired on a town outside of Toronto, Canada. Getting home and sitting in the kitchen with my family, and I hear this lady screaming, "Accident!" I just actually got back in off the highway coming in from doing that testing that weekend, and sitting down, and so I go up to the backyard, hop up on the fence to take a look, and there's a lady running around in her robe screaming, and she's pointing down the long row of townhouses. So I hop the fence, and I'm running down that way where she's pointing. So I'm thinking car accident, so that's what I heard from her is accident. As I'm running down, I curve around the road, and go to the street. I see no vehicles, I see no accident, and then a gentleman to my left, by the screen door, says, "No, in here." So he waves me over, I run over, I get to the door, he pulls me in, I see another lady running around the table frantically, screaming, and I look to the right, and there's a gentleman holding a doorknob, and he's white as a ghost, and he waves me over. I go over towards him, but I'm still got my eyes keen on the floor looking for blood, because I was initially in that prone way of looking for an accident. And as we get to the door, he opens the door, grabs me, shuts me, and shuts the door. I'm in a very small bathroom now, and I'm looking at the floor, and I look up, and there's a gentleman sitting there in the bathroom toilet, and he's looking at me, his eyes wide open, and he's gone, he's dead. So I run over to where he is, and I'm touching him, and now the instinct for vitals and everything start to come in, CPR and whatever, his lips are a little bit blue, a little bit pale and pasty, and I'm touching him for the vitals, and there's no vitals. So I go to get ready to do CPR, and I hear, "Let me go." So it was very faint, and I heard it, and so I step back for a second, and I'm thinking of it, so I go right back again, going to do CPR, and I hear it really loud, "Let me go." So I did step back, and as I'm looking at this gentleman looking at me, you see right through his eyes to his soul, and I knew he's not there. So out I go at the door, and you can hear a pin drop, because everybody then, it was 2-3 people, there was 50 people in that room. They're all staring at me, wanting an answer. I just shook my head, and everything just went haywire after that. And found out through the coroner that he had a massive coronary, and his heart rate, so there was no way of saving him either way. I knew then that I had a different approach, because as a child I heard and I seen, growing up in imaginary friends, as people say, and what have you. So now I'm 21 years of age, I'm 49, I'm going to be 50 here shortly. So we're going back that far. And the very first movie I'm ever in is a training exercise for police officers, firefighters, and EMTs. And you just can't get hired on and quit without them wanting to know why. Why are you quitting? And because they just put a whole bunch of candidates through all this rigorous testing and spent lots of money, and you're quitting. So they sent the film crew. I had a captain, a sergeant, and a film crew from Chatham Police Force come down to the home, and they were asking various questions. And so when I got to the part where the individual was speaking to me, and I could hear him, their jaws were literally hitting the floor. And, you know, looking back at it in hindsight, it's difficult to tell people this, and we can't imagine. But, yeah, so that's the very first movie I'm in. And then...
Well, and back... So this would have been a while back. Were you married at that time?
Yes, I was married.
Okay, so how is it that how did you go home and tell your family, or did you? Like, were you able to tell your wife and say, well, this is kind of what happened?
Yeah, it was a different type of scenario going back and telling them what was going on, and it was very a different situation as well, because my father ended up, because he was there for coffee that morning. By the time he got to the patio door, and I came up shaking my head, I was explaining on the walk back what happened, and you know, and then the side story to this as well, Alan, was it turned out to be my sister's best friend's father. Crazy in how that sounds, but that's how it went. So we went to the funeral, and it's hard to see people distraught and what have you. And I'm a very emotional guy when it comes to people losing loved ones and what have you. And getting that bridge and explaining, you know, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, and what have you. You know, people understand, and you know, especially family members.
Yeah. And so how does it affect a police officer's life, Bud?
You know, and then ending up like not becoming a police officer after that, and doing what I did. My first case was about 25 years ago. In my hometown, there was a gentleman. There was a boy who came from Quebec and moved to Ontario with his family. He was working at a gas station, earning money for a part-time job in high school. Self-serve. There was two individuals who were ripping off a car stereo in the townhouses across or adjacent from the gas station. They decided to go across and rob the gas station. And poor Mark Campbell was in the gas station working that night. Prior to me getting this story to you guys and explaining it, I was in the parking lot of an apartment building. My friend was a superintendent or managed the building. And I was looking over his shoulder, and he caught me that my eyes weren't on him anymore, but on another individual in the distance walking towards the front entrance of the building to go in. And I seen this black shroud around this individual. When I see black around people, they're bad. That's what I've distinguished over the years. And so this was really all around me. If you could picture Eddie Van Halen, 5 foot nothing, this kid was a spitting image of Eddie Van Halen. So Greg turns around, looks over where I was looking. He says, "That's Jesse. You want to go meet him?" And so we ended up somehow in Jesse's apartment on the 3rd floor. We're sitting there talking, and a line of questioning that were coming from me, because Greg filled me in a little bit about Jesse, and as along the lines of, you know, he's up in court for some charge, and so I'm looking at this kid, and I'm questioning him, and he says, "Stand up." So I did. I stand up, and he goes, "Are you effing hot?" And I didn't know what he meant. And all of a sudden, he's raising my shirt, feeling around my body, and I'm not near. He's looking for a wire, and effing hot. So then he says, "Sit down." And he goes, "You want to know?" He says, "I'm in court over this." And he starts explaining. And he starts to say, "We went and to rob the gas station after ripping out the car stereos. And Thomas pulled out a gun, Thomas Cook. And he pulled out the gun, and he says, you should have seen him hopping like a rabbit. And you could picture me holding the hand right now like a gangster, how they hold the gun sideways. This is how this kid was showing him. And he's going, and he's popping him like this. And he said the kid was hopping around like a rabbit. And he had no remorse. He had no inkling of any sadness in him. It was like a game to him. And in the midst of him doing that, his pregnant girlfriend was pacing back and forth and telling him to shut up. And he stood up and he thanked her and told her to shut up. So this right there, we're all alarmed now. Now I'm standing, Greg's standing, and he's telling us to leave. As we leave his apartment, he grabs me, turns me around and says, tell anybody I'm going to kill you. So, okay, fine. We leave. I go back down to where I live. I call the detectives in the police station. And I explained to them what took place. They said, Rob, you have to go back and befriend him and wear wire for us because we're in the midst of a trial with him over this Mark Campbell that is a murder case. And I couldn't put one and one together at the time, but then it all started flushing in. I was like, wow, this is really something, but I can't do that because he made me already. He already lifted my shirt, felt me for a wire, and so on. So that was my first case 25 years ago. And I keep telling people on every show I do, you know, they want to be a psychic, they want to be whatever, helping the police work. Do not put yourself in harm's way. Do not do what I did. That was a foolish thing to do 25 years ago.
And so how was it that you got into actually doing this with police agencies? I find that most police agencies do not take on this easily.
True.
And in fact, in some areas, I know in England, I produced a show in England, and they think you're mad, as they would call it, if you go to a police agency and try to help them with psychic abilities, in however you want to do it. They think that's nuts, and so in different areas. So how is it that you were able to, let's say, break the ice or get into it?
Over the years, back in 2003, 2004, I had a radio show, and during that span of 4 years of doing it, the Natalie Holloway case came about. The producers of BBC Radio and an award-winning film producer wanted to put this thing together where we go to Aruba and give information where Natalie would be. I do my drawings, the shoes left on the beach, the boat, yellow colors, and everything that we've now seen on TV over the last years. Coming from that were the authorities on Aruba. We were about to leave. We were about to board the plane, go and do all this. The authorities said, step back, because everybody and their grandmother home in that island. And the economy followed, because it was just about Natalie. And so the one producer said, we can't go there at this present time. We're going to put this down for a little bit. What would you like to do now? Well, we went and shot a movie instead, and then I got called for another case, helping out with award-winning screenwriter Gloria Shepherd on the murder of Brian Jones, the Rolling Stones. She went a little bit of insight what I could give and what have you, and it just continually rolled, and it got more and more and more and more and more. If people go to robbiethomas.net, and you can take a look on the murder, missing persons cases that are all listed there. There's all kinds of letters from people from back in the early 2000s all the way up to now, and from endorsements from police and what have you that are there on various cases, people missing that are found alive, to people that we've actually, assisted in putting in jail for murdering children. It just snowballed, and then word got out, and it just continued on, right up to present day.
Have there ever been kind of, let's say, how do we say, negative pushback, or people that say that don't want you to help, or that have maybe a different point of view. There's still quite a few people, for instance, that I come across that say that it's, the devil's work, or you're speaking with the devil, or it's really a demon, or there's some sort of connotation in that area. So have you come across that in your work yet?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've come across the families who actually reach out, who, and I'm not saying calling them, let's say, Bible thumpers or, very religious individuals, because, I believe in God and Jesus is my Savior, and, whatever faith people may be. It's funny because one lady who's very conservative, very religious, child got taken into the sex slave trade. Her letter is right there on the page. She says, "He got my daughter back alive." We went through conversations on the phone. She was very adamant in saying, "My family's conservative. There's no way I'm going to do what you tell me to do." But I said, "But you approached." She goes, "I know. I followed you since the mid-'90s. I used to have forums, the Robbie Thomas forums in the mid-'90s, and I had people from all over the world, to help them out spiritually and what have you." And so she followed me, and she says, "I never thought I'd have to use you, but the detective is at a loss. We don't know what to do." And so I mentioned you. He said, "Contact you and ask." So we went through, like I said, very different scenarios over the phone, and I gave her an idea what to do, because I felt and seen that they were watching our Facebook page. And I said, "You're going to have to put this down as a heading or whatever you want to put, but you're going to have to put what I write up." And she says, "There's no way. My family's conservative. They'll disown me. My friends won't talk to me." And we went through all this, and then we disengaged our conversation. That was Thursday, I believe it was. Then she called me back up again Thursday night, and we spoke. And I said, "Look, it's either the wall between you and your daughter and them. You want your daughter, and that's the main point. We have to work and do what is right. And those people who on the other side saying that it's wrong, well, we're going to do the right thing, and we're going to get your daughter back." And so she says, "I love my daughter. I want her back." So we did what we did on a Friday, and on the weekend, that weekend, that's just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, she had her daughter back. And as you can read her letter, it's all stipulated right there. That's just one instance of very conservative religious people. When you look down in Kentucky, there was a boy that was missing. I'm in Canada, and I get a picture and his name. That's all I get. And so the automatic hand drawing, or, as they call it, the devil's work, on paper was coming from Spirit. And I was asking, "Please lead me to the area where you are. Give me something that I could start with." And so he shows me stadium lights. And I put 4 circles, and I put stadium lights off. And then I went through repeat offender and, flags and people wearing orange vests. Well, he stood on the murderer's front porch. The construction was right in front of his house. The guys in the orange vest and the flags are on the ground. And that's where the little boy was playing with those flags that the murderer then took him and put him in his house. And then they said, "Give me a name." And give me John. And again, if you stood on the front porch of the murderer's home and looked through a little clearing across the street, Papa John Stadium, again, there's the lights, was right there. So we're in the right area. This is coming from good. This is coming from Spirit. There's nothing bad about this. We're trying to locate a boy who's missing into some evil devil who has him. So I said, "Give me something more. Give me more. Give me his name." And there was a break. And I'm getting before, during, and post of this boy's murder. And so there was a break, and I'm frantic, and I'm already into it in an hour, trying to get this information, and I'm speaking with Spirit. And all of a sudden it comes back and gives me a name of Cecil. So I'm drawing on the top of the page, out of the eyes of a 4-year-old, what the man would look like. And you see his mugshot there alongside of the drawing I did, his ears protruding out, and it's very similar. And the name Cecil. So I put Cecil and an arrow down towards the drawing I did. Well, the man, who's the devil, not me, because I'm trying to help and find this boy and try to find a result to his case, which, we are enlightened through angels, and God helps in these various ways. Gives me the name, and sure enough, the guy's name who murdered the little boy was Cecil Eugene New. He's in jail. He'll never see the daylight ever again. He was a repeat offender. Everything that's on that paper, that's what that man was. And the boy was showing me, the spirit was showing me. So when people say, this is a different way of looking at it and saying, we don't believe it because it's evil, because it's not. Because we're getting positive action out of this. I don't take money for it. I've never taken a reward for it. And I help people out find their lost loved ones and assist the police who make their arrests to put these murderers away. What evil is that?
Mm-hmm. And if I can ask, so you are a Christian, and
yes.
Were you brought up that way? Is this something that changed in your life, or something you were kind of brought up? You've always sort of been a Christian.
Well, yeah, Roman Catholic Christian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I look at it as the same way, Alan.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious in how. So your whole family must have been religious that you were growing up with at the time.
Yeah, my mom, I learned a lot from my mother because she didn't see black and white like a lot of jaded individuals in our life. As children, we see everything in color because that's the perfect recipe for a perfect life, is looking at the eyes of a child, because they don't see racism. They don't see, hatred towards people who are different sexual orientation or whatever. It's just, that's life, and they accept it. We get older, we get jaded, and we start stipulating things and putting things in the corners and what have you. My mother wasn't like that. My mother was for everybody and every faith. And if you went into her home, she had a Buddha, she had Nefertiti, she had Jesus and Mary, she had everything. And I learned, and I used to ask her questions, why? And she says, because everybody has the right. And so I learned a lot from that, and took a lot back with me over the years from being nurtured from her. In the aspect of saying, is this the right way, or this is the right way, living life and living it and letting other people live life fully themselves is the right way, and having respect for everybody. That's the whole purpose of life.
Right, yeah, and that's important. I think I was just kind of checking to see if because sometimes it changes people's family dynamics when one person becomes into the medium or psychic realms and they start practicing such as what you do, and sometimes it maybe scares off other members of the family.
Yeah, my children are like this. It's amazing how my daughters are. I wrote a book called Signs from Heaven, and we bought this home from Gina. It was a sad story. She bought this home. Her mother and father helped her renovate it. It was one of the oldest farm homes in the area. It was the very first one in the area, actually, and it was built in 1950. They renovated it, made it beautiful. And her mom and dad went on vacation, and while they were on vacation, they were hit by a semi-truck and killed. So Gina, in the midst, put the house up for sale. My wife and I were in the house hunt for a long time, and we just gave up. One day we went for a little car ride in the area, a beautiful area, and we weren't looking for a house. I didn't know why I came down this road, and there it was. It was up for sale in the morning. We spoke to the real estate agent that afternoon. The deal was done late afternoon, and we get a phone call, and she actually dropped the price, but we already agreed to the price. This is a really touching story. And then, okay, we'll take that. And then she threw in brand new fridge, another phone call, brand new fridge and dryer, washer and dryer, stove. This is unbelievable. So, we couldn't understand why everything was happening like this. It was happening for a purpose, but then we found out that as I was signing the papers, the realtor said to me, her mom and dad were killed in a car accident just not like a week ago from renovating this whole home, and just she went out quick. So I guess the memories and whatever and what have you. And so she leaves, we take over the home. And I write the story about Gina in the book, and we've often talked on the phone. We're still in touch. Like I said, I stay in touch with everybody. And her son was staying in the one room upstairs on the 3rd floor where my daughter was staying. And my daughter was saying, I hear voices, I see things, and it's very, very electrifying in that room. And so, I started seeing a little child running around. And my daughter's actually seeing them a lot more than I. I catch her out of the corner of my eye and trying to focus and try to figure out where this child's coming from. We put a pool in the backyard now, and we dug up little bones. So, a hand with frilly dress on it and a femur, and what was really peculiar was there was huge horse bones all along there as well. So I get a hold of the original owners, and I talked to them who built the home back in 1950, and they said, no, we never buried anybody in the backyard. So it's just amazing whoever got buried back there even before 1950. And as we're going through all this, my daughter's just seeing this child up on the 3rd floor and running around and what have you. My wife starts to have these interludes as well. We're in bed, and she'll pull the covers over her head. She goes, I hear the child's voice, and it's asking me, teach me how to play. Teach me how to play. And I said, well, I'm trying to, and it's evading me because it knows I can see or hear, and I'm catching the little child out of the corner of my eye, but you're actually hearing it saying, teach me how to play. So I called Gina up, and Gina goes, oh my goodness, my mother and father, the room that you guys have your bedroom in, that was their room. And the room that your child's in, that was Michael's room. And we had to get him on medication because the doctor thought he had ADHD, but I kept swearing he didn't. He was telling me he was hearing voices, and the little girl was visiting him. And what happened was the mother of Gina would go up to Michael's room and say the Catholic prayer, teach me how to pray. That's the title of it. Not teach me how to play. So my wife was hearing teach me how to play. So we put one and one together. Oh my goodness. So that's what it is. The child wants my wife to continue going up to Cherish's room to say the prayer, teach me how to pray. And it was amazing. So, I write that story in the book. And my daughters, my one daughter, Mackenzie, used to love going into Jessica's room. And as you get to the end of the hall, you have to take a sharp right. And it's about 3 feet so you get to the door and go in there. And Mackenzie wanted to go and play with makeup. And, kids do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all of a sudden we hear this ghastly scream. And here comes Mac. And she's running. We can hear her running frantically. And then boom, 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 boom. She falls down the first flight of stairs, gets up, runs, trips, boom, 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 second flight of stairs, runs right into the living room, jumps right into my arms. And what's my name? She goes, that child, I see you. She ran face to face with the child. So, yeah, my kids see, inherently. And it's amazing how vast they are. And they see what I do. I mean, on murder cases on, like, Victoria Stafford, I brought them to meet the family. I thought it would be good because of the fact the first time I went down to see the family, they had a little girl there, and she was very upset. And I said, and my daughters, and they could talk. And I'm working with the family, Rodney, who's the father, and what have you. And I think it's a family thing because when I get with families, it's like I adopt them, they adopt me, and we just don't not talk anymore. And then it's something else. So they know what I do. They know what Dad does. The filming, whatever. And I brought my wife on many cases as well, and she sees what goes on. And they're all, I guess, being around me, they would themselves inherit what's going on, and they're very open to it.
Is this something you think that perhaps everybody has?
Intuition? Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just something that most people don't pay attention to.
Well, that's it. That's a good word to use. I like to use acceptance. There's a lot of people who, again, taking that analogy of a child, we're not jaded, we're completely open, coming to a jaded individual because we're cynical when we get older, we want the tangible, we want proof, we want this and that. If they're not as open and accepted to certain things, they'll shut it off. And, they'll say, well, I was just thinking the phone was going to ring, and it did. Or, I was thinking that song, and it came on the radio. That's part of intuition. Those are baby steps. And, I was thinking of my friend just last night, and this morning I bumped into baby steps. Then you get into where you're completely open, and like I said, you get the murderer's name, and you get the body's location, and you can get the daughter home alive.
So where do you see yourself now? You've been doing all sorts of things, and now you're going to be part of veryparanormal.com. Do you want to explain that, actually, what's happening there?
Yeah, they are a very small, at this time being, we just launched Paranormal 24/7, 7 days a week. They're on a low budget right now, and they're hoping to grow like every station when they open, like a Netflix or an HBO, where you'll have like the $5 or $10 million budget per show and do these things. They got the great idea, they got the great backing. It's a slow start, like anything in life, and they'll eventually get to that point. And the producers who are in with Very Paranormal is a vast amount of people that are involved in this, who brought this forward. They shot Psychic Profiler with me, International Police Chief Kevin Smith, who was my offset on the show, and America's Most Wanted film crew. We shot a double homicide in Kentucky back in 2011-ish, 12. And we've been sitting on it. It got picked up quick by people we owned, wanted it. It was a Friday. I remember I was shopping, and this is comical, and you're going to have a giggle. I was shopping with my wife, and the phone rang, and it was Michael Lamport. He says, "You ain't going to believe this. I just pitched it yesterday. They want an emergency meeting. We're not to pitch it to nobody else no more. They want the show." And I said, "Oh my God, who?" He goes, "It's owned." I said, "Oh, wow." And so I said to my wife, I go, "Here, you hold the phone. I'm going outside with the shopping cart to speak." And I gave her the shopping cart, and I called her the phone. I was excited. So anyways, I don't fluster. And sure enough, everything was great. Then, just like things happen as quick the other way as well. The following week, Oprah had her money woes. And if you remember that she lost all that money, like $384 million. She canceled Rosie O'Donnell, and then of course we got shelved. And they told us if they wanted the second window of it, that meaning if, say, NBC picked it up, they would show it as well. So that's where we stood. And then in the light of everything else that was going on, Kevin Smith, Chief of Police, International Police Chief, decided to go to bed one night and never woke up. So I lost a good friend, a very good cop, one of the, I would say, best methodically thinking individuals to help families that is gone. And so for a year I sat on it, and, I was thinking, who can I get? What can I do? I could do the show myself, sure, work with law enforcement, but I had this tangible guy who was science, and I'm spiritual, and put it together and work it. Well, I come along and did a case with U.S. Marshal Jeff Brodin. I've invited him, Assistant Chief of Police Martha Decker, who is excited to work with me. I'm excited to work with her. She's tough as nails, and she reminds me of the female side of Kevin, and I'm very excited. We got the great team of people still there, on-scene death investigators, and what have you, and other sheriff departments and law enforcement agencies that are waiting. We actually, Alan, just pitched this again yesterday. So all the networks have it. We have so many people who commented on it on social media, hundreds that want the show up and running, because there's a lot of families who need help. And I've devoted my life in helping people this way. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the proper thing to do when you have an able ability to go out and reach out and do this. Because, for the moment, and I call it for the moment, it's me doing this. And for the next moment, it might not be me no more. God might not need me, he might need Alan, and Alan's going to do it. So then let's take advantage of this and help as many people as we can and get it done, not fast, but the quality of it, and help these people. So it got pitched yesterday, and I'm also sitting with another show contract. I'm looking at it on my desk right now, and it's with my agents. It reads kind of quirky, but you work through things like that. And there's a third show I created that got pitched also yesterday or the day before, and it's with an Academy Award-winning film producer in L.A. who is just over the top with it. So, I'm looking at the variations of everything I can do from, straight up paranormal to going to doing police work, and I want the gist of both. It has to be that way because people come first, families come first, and I stress that with every production company. You can't say exclusive to me here and not do this. This is the baby. I've actually created Psychic Profile in 2006, and it's been a work in progress till now, so it's 10 years. And in the midst, I've been helping people, and there's various media outlets. I've been in the newspapers and on TV about it, and NBC for crimes and whatever. But so I hold it very dear to me, and I hold families dear to me, and it's got to be a plus. It's got to be the first thing to go.
Right. So even though that you're real busy with all these things, you're still out there helping people.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
I was going to say, and also when you help them, so when you go to a place that has some sort of we'll call it a haunting issue, some sort of an issue where they're living with something that's paranormal to them, supernatural, and you go there and help them or try to figure out what it is. Now, do you follow up with these people as well, or do you just sort of, that's it and onward?
No, more than a follow-up. Rescue. We release and I explain to the spirits who are residual energy, who are there, wanting answers. And I'm going to refer again back to one of my books and looking at Signs from Heaven. When I went to the home, and it was very dark. It had a very dark feel to it, and I knew they knew I was coming. Not even being there, but through the communication of the family to me, the spirits that were there knew I was coming. I could feel it. So as we get there, there's a ceiling fan going faster than, like, you've never seen the ceiling fan go that fast. I mean, it doesn't have the controls to go that fast. And it was amazing because I'm standing in the hallway, and I brought a radio show. This goes back to 2003. I brought a radio show from my hometown there, and it was very popular, and we were doing live investigations. So I was like a whole week in this home. It was the radio show to explain why I'm there and what have you. And we were taking calls from Italy, from Singapore, from England, America, and Canada. And I'm going through this place. I think it was the very first live paranormal investigation via broadcast. And I'm explaining what's going on, and things were happening. There's a picture on my Facebook. I'm going to send that to you. I want you to take a peek at it. You should see the host's face. I mean, she was just literally couldn't get the words out. You could see the expression on her face. And then her crew that was there. We set up cameras and took pictures. I'm on the step, and I'm talking. There's the entrance to the one hall straight ahead of me, and then there's a living room off to the right, another entrance. And everybody's in the living room looking in, because it was really cold in that area where I was standing. You see my breath. And I'm talking. They're snapping pictures, and when they snapped the picture, you could see the face of a lady over my shoulder. And it was amazing. We've got the recordings. What I did was I set recordings up in the hallway and then throughout the house. And as we're talking, there's dogs barking. And it's picked up by the recorder, and really weird noises, like something like I'm on a Bugs Bunny cartoon show. You can't mimic this, and you can't do it with a human voice, but if I can, I'll try. It was just like ka-ting and ka-ting, but it was really weird noises. And it was continuing. And the dogs were barking. There was no dogs in the vicinity. There was no dogs in the house. And there was noises where they came from on the recording. And then, I'm going through all this. So I said, I'm going to go down to the land registry after the second day. I want to find out who was involved in all this house. And I'm staying in the hallway as I'm leaving, talking to the owners, and the little girl comes up. And I said to the daughter, I said, she plays with you, doesn't she? She touch your ear. And the wife goes, oh my gosh, nobody knew that. And I said, yeah. And she goes, Mommy, how do you know that she plays with my ear? And so I said, I'm going to the land registry office. So I went down there. On the land registry of the home, you see the man's name, and the wife's name is written there. Her name was Elizabeth Ross, but they put it backwards. But Ross, Eliza, and they didn't have any room. So they wrote Beth up on top of the page, put like a little arrow going up on the top of the page. And then when I was in reading them, you hear me on the recorder going, her name's broken. And she's trying to tell me her name's broken. It's Eliza. And when we went to the land registry, and it was Elizabeth. It was broken up that way. So that was the indication to say that was her. It was Eliza and Beth that was broken. So that's what we're looking at. We figured out afterwards there was a fire in the home down into the basement where we went. As we're down in the basement, I'm down there with the gentleman. It's dark, but we could still see up into the stairs going up. We couldn't understand why the people up there weren't coming down. And it was vastly dark, and the wife goes, I can't see a thing, put a light on. Well, we had the light on, and it was dark. It was a dim light, but it was dark. And so she starts coming down. We'll walk over to give her a hand and walk her down. And she goes, this is very peculiar. It's really dark down here. And we started catching really bright lights in the basement on film and what have you. And all of a sudden, you see this whole vast black shadow on the stairwell go streaming up the stairs, and the door slams really, really hard, and the people that are up there screaming because it scared them. It startled them. When we finished up, there's a letter in the book from the people who were there, and they write what happens, or what happened, and they validated everything that was there. We come to, I think, day 3, day 4, and I got the recorders out, and I'm telling her, I said, you were murdered here. And she goes, you can hear on the tape, go, that's the truth. And I'm going, wow. After we went through all the evidence, it was amazing. After we released them, and I say, go to the light, and go to God, and Jesus loves you, and don't stay here, don't suffer no more. The air lifted in that hallway. There was no more cold. The next day, I think it was the 5th day, I checked back with the family. Everything seems to be normal. There's no more attacks to the little girl. There's no more things spinning fast in the air, and lights aren't popping, and doors aren't slamming anymore. A week goes by. I check back with them again. Everything's fine. But it took 5 days to get this to leave, and it was something else. Being drained, that's an understatement for doing that. It was amazing, though.
And so, have you ever come across something that has really scared you, and almost fear for your life, or anything that you might classify as we hear on as demons?
Looking back at the paranormal side of things and being touched and slapped, scratched and whatever over the years, yes, it's happened. What scares me more is when I've been asked this question before, is it the living or is it the dead? And it's more or less the living, because of the threats I get from people saying, let them bones lie. I was in a case in West Virginia, and the guy calls up and goes, let them bones lie. Don't touch those bones. And those, like, really? So, looking at that would be more scary, but I don't know. I know I don't have an ego. I know I don't. Maybe I do. My wife says. That's a different story. But, you have to put that persona, like, really? You're really threatening me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I said, I've sat beside murderers, and that's what I go after. And like one guy, another case in Kentucky, where I've held the recorder, and Detective Andy DeLay, and he's there, and we're asking this kid on a double homicide where he cut the arms off, and I got the kid to say yes, he was there. And that's more scary to me than being invited into a place where there's so-called demons or spirits, because I've been doing it for such a long time. I was in the movie Dead Whisper back in 2005. We went to Mantino State Asylum. Very depressing, very dark, very, they're talking over top of me on film, and she's telling me to say my story and to tell the story of her, and so I did. And then getting down to Al Capone's Speakeasy in Chicago, there's still bloodstains on the floor. And I'm standing there, and they're filming, and I'm with Don Kress, who was an actor on Chicago Fire. He used to own this speakeasy, and he's the fire chief on that TV show. And so we're sitting there, and I said, I hear bang, like right here. Like, this is where the guy was shot. And you hear him talk, I shot him here, bang. Like he's mimicking me or mocking me. And we're up in the loft. And this Al Capone speakeasy one time was Al Capone, and then as the eras changed, Hell's Angels owned it. And in the loft area, they found two guys with a glass table, cocaine, dead, overdosed, upstairs. And so I'm going through the motions of talking to this individual, and I say his name, and I was off a little bit, but it was his name. And I said, you're here, and I wear a cross on my wrist, and I wear a cross around my neck. And he mocks me. He says, Jesus doesn't want me. And you can hear him right on film as I'm talking. And, not only that, it was a positive because it was caught on EVP. So it was like, the evilness of people with spirits, they want to be understood. They want to be, acknowledged. When I hear people say, "Oh, I got pushed, I got scratched," and because you're calling them out. They're humans on the other side, but they're human here. They're spirit form, but they're people at one time. You have to respect them. And being pushed is you're in their turf, you're in their territory. And then looking at the evil part of it, there's dark entities out there, and we're going to cross them. Fearful. I can't say I'm not. Of course, I get the chills and I do what I do. I mean, they know exactly you because that's what they do. They harvest your soul. They want to know everything, and they do know about you, your faults, your bad and everything. So you have to go in there with an open heart and understand that if you ask for forgiveness from God and you do what you do, that the dark can't really harm you, and in a way where you're going to be dead because it just doesn't happen. Looking at that, Alan, and looking at the fact of the evil and the dark side of it, I've brushed it.
And do you find that now that you're going to be getting more exposure on TV, do you think that's going to change the way you do things or the way you do investigations?
No, I think I'll continue to do what I do. I do what I do best. I'm not doing what other people can do and how they do it. Everybody has their own different ways of doing things. I'll continue doing the crime and helping families the best I can and the way I can do it. And doing the paranormal side of it, I'll do what I've done over the years as well, and to bring an understanding, to bring forth the education and what have you. And I'm there to learn as well, because nobody's an expert in this field. And if they say they're an expert and they're this and that, well, you know what? They got that off the box of Cheerios. They're not. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's true. You have to always be learning. When you stop, when you come to conclusions, you no longer look for any new evidence, so you become crystallized. It's you've got to keep searching. Do you find anything on television right now that you find is an influence on what you do?
Back in 2005, let's go back even further. I think it was the end of 2003, 2004. I had my first one-hour television special. And it was out of Ottawa, Canada. And I was talking about spirit and investigations. And the actual show is on RobbieThomas.net. People can watch it. and it's called In Good Faith. Back then, there really wasn't any paranormal shows on TV, like Ghost Hunters or any, because they came along in 2004, and there was nothing out there. I got an interesting phone call from an individual from Kentucky who was doing paranormal work, and he says to me, you know, I've been searching. There's hardly anybody out there who does this, you know, and he's been on Space Channel, Sci-Fi, and whatever over the years. And he goes, there's not too many groups, if you will, or how you call them, paranormal groups that are out there. I look at it as continuing to do what I do, and then as the other people come forward, and again, in 2005, we shot Dead Whisper, and I think that's when Ghost Hunters were actually coming on TV, and then every other show stemmed from that. I got an interesting phone call, Alan, back in 2007, I believe it was, that Dead Whisper, my movie, was the term paper in Penn State. People watched the movie, and that gave the idea to do Paranormal State. It was an amazing phone call, long chat with an individual about this, and I'm flattered, you know, because everything else all came afterwards. And I look at it as, this is fantastic. And then before me, there was a lot of great people who did investigations, a lot of beautiful people out there, Holzer, you know, many, many, many people. The Warrens, you know, and looking back at what you do, I don't know if I can change, Alan. I'm trying to stimulate and figure this out if there'd be a different way to do things. I only know one way of doing it, and that's just bringing the truth forward and doing what I can do. You know, people accept it. They do. They don't.
Now, do you work with a lot of equipment when you do these, or are you just using your own psychic ability?
I don't. The only time I ever used equipment was to record for that family in that home that I explained to you back in 2003 or 4.
Right.
I don't use equipment. I don't like equipment. And maybe I should rephrase that. I don't like to use equipment. I like when the people who do use it, like back in 2005, we recruited a great team. Michael Esposito, EVP specialist, who's very well known. He helped in the PSYOPs in the American Army over in Iraq. He's a graduate of Purdue. Very, you know, I researched all these people, and I got out the best that I could find. And sure enough, now we're 10 years, 11 years ahead, and Michael is a colleague of mine. So I like what he does, and we mesh very well. So you have the science, and you have the spirituality, and we mesh. And I'll explain to him, like, you know, that gadget there's no good, and it ain't going to work, and sure enough, you know, it doesn't, or what have you. We rub off with each other pretty well. But yeah, I like what they use. There's certain things that I think that are just frivolous. But getting back to the basics, you know, as we were kids, my first paranormal investigation was 1972. 77, sorry. And we broke into the Lawrence home. And I brought everybody. I did a convention here in town. I brought, like, Patrick Burns. I brought Keith Age, all these guys from all these channels here from hometown. And I brought them to where I did my first investigation. Went in there, and I showed them a photo that was captured of a lady who was caught on film back in the 70s. And then, you know, it was great because they got to see what I did a long, long time ago. And I was only 11 at the time. So, you know, looking back at that, kids inquisitive. Our tools back then, you're going to laugh. The tools back then was a flashlight, baby powder, and a rope. And we went in searching for ghosts. The rope was to hold on to for each, so that the ghost wouldn't swallow. That's how our mentality back then. Would swallow you up, and we'd be sure to pull each other out. And the baby powder was to throw on the floor in case we seen the footprints, and we know to get out.
Well, do you think that they're going to laugh like that in the future about what's going on now, like the investigations? And is there a positive to all of the television shows?
The positive to the television shows, I think it's gotten a little bit out of hand on the side that when you go into certain places and they have a show every week and they have so much evidence, I mean, it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen that way, and they're fooling the people. Because when people don't understand, they get a microphone or a recorder, and they have somebody 15 feet from them walking in, say, flip-flops, or they're rubbing their hand on their jeans, and their jeans make a sound, and someone's like, somebody here? And then you hear, Vic, 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 Vic. They go, oh, they're talking to us. Well, no, it's not. It's the Vic, Vic, Vic. You're hearing the person beside you with their, there's a lot of things that, people are misconstrued about in doing these investigations and doing all this stuff. And they look at the TV and they go, that's it. That's how you do it. I'm going there. And, it's just not that way.
No, I know. Well, that's kind of the negative. Do you think that that's just going to all fade away? Like right now, I know that when we're doing a lot of our social advertising and going through things, I see there's so many groups now, and every town's got at least 5 some sort of paranormal UFO groups, and about 500 mediums working there. And do you think that as the fad wears off, that a lot of this will just dissipate and just disappear?
It's like everything. It has a full circle. It's a fad for now, and then it'll be a trend again. It's a fad for now, and it'll be a trend again. We're getting to the point where people are very interested. They want to know more about the other side. So look at the times we're living in, very desolate.
Yeah.
So people are reaching. They're reaching. And they should be reaching for their faith and holding that still within them and not looking for, the not obvious that's out there. But you got people who are searching, which is good. They want answers, more so than it was back in the 80s and the 90s and back then in the early 2000s. People used to think, you changed. As you said, devil, whatever.
Yeah.
I remember coming off that first TV show I did in 2003. People were like, what? But it was syndicated. And then it was shown all over Canada and throughout the States. And, you've got to bring this to the forefront. And I think people have done it. They're doing a good job of it because they want to learn. But let's learn properly. And as you say, all these shows on TV, it's becoming an influx of castration of ghost shows that really don't show anything. They're just out there, look, we got to, and they run to the next room, or there's a creak in the floor and they think it's something. Bring something forward that has a real good thought behind it that's going to show science and the connection to spirituality.
Because that always leads me to the, and I always like to talk to all of my guests about this, the things like the Ouija board and how it gets put as the evil entity is in the board, and it's the thing, I don't know. It's almost like an item that can scare people. You can, make a movie of it.
Yeah, you could make a Sunday afternoon movie of that. When you look at it, if you give anything in life, anything whatsoever, the power of intent turns to the power of control. And if you give that substance to something, you're eluding who you are, and it's just you're just giving up. I mean, I could take this plastic bottle and put it on my hand, and it's like the Ouija board, and I can spin it on the floor and say, if you turn right, then that means yes, and turn left, it's no. I look at how people put the faith into things rather than into themselves and try to look at which rational and proper. In all, I guess if you look at it, it makes good television.
Yeah. Well, I don't like the, it's almost inferred to as, walk into the house and they ask the owners, you've had issues, yes, and when did it start? Nobody played with a Ouija, did they? Oh yeah, we played with a Ouija, and then it's a portal and blah blah blah. Okay, so fair enough. Then all of a sudden, they're in the home using equipment and asking ghosts or spirits to talk to them. They're trying to bring them forward too. Is it not the same thing? I just think that they're selling a little bit of a fear, and it's just I think my point is it's really kind of unknown territory, and I think it's the wrong suggestion to give to people.
Well, it is, because like my wife says all the time, there's one paranormal show we watch is called Paranormal Witness, because it's got a story behind it, and it's not, so much all the trickery and fakery and what have you, although probably the stories are. But it's a story baseline, which is intriguing. But you look at the avenue of a recorder versus the Ouija board, or just walking through the guiding rods, and enticing spirit to come forward. Or it has a saying, if you go in and invite, you're going to get bit. And then I like that, and I came up with something. There's people who don't know how to walk among the living, who are trying to walk among the dead. It's crazy when you look at it.
Yeah.
And it's just off my mind.
Yeah, it's a mess. So, where do you see the world? Tell me.
Oh, yeah, I always have a great outlook for the world. Every day I have a posting because I love people and I love, there's good in this world. There truly is. Of course, we have the bad and evil, but we've had bad and evil for centuries. And it's just, it's just got a different face now, a different name,
a
different way it approaches things. We are a resilient human race. And we have to look at it as one. I wrote a book called Time Shift, and in the book, it started out as the screenplay. Mark Tillman, who did It for Stephen King, was the casting director, and Don Hutchison of Liftoff Productions, his good friend, was writing this script for Don, and telling him about it, and I put in 9.0 earthquake off the coast of Japan, black tsunami, ravaging the land, and I put on Facebook from March 2nd to March 10th of 2011, everything that was going to happen daily. It was just enticing the people. Well, March 11th, 5 days later, a week later, it actually did happen. And it was already written in the script. It was all posted, it was always stamped and what have you. Looking at that and seeing the precursor of what was going to happen. These things happen all the time. They happen in the past, and people say, oh my gosh, you've seen a revelation. You've seen what was happening prior to it happening, and the exact number. Well, in the book, 8 more things came true that I've seen. Post-publication of the book, a year later, 2 years, still coming true. And down to names and places and what have you. These are just things that we all, at times, will have a little inclination of something come to us, and it's there. To see the whole world as a vast, when I think about the world, I think that we're going to evolve into something more of a more oneness, because we can't pit black and white anymore. We can't say gay and straight anymore. We just got to call everybody people, and that's who we are. People got to stop labeling people, stop putting them in corners. There's nobody better than anybody in this world. Everybody believes the same. It's simple. No one's going to get any higher or lower in this world. You're going to go 6 feet under like me. We're all going to reach the same place. That's just the way it is. All this ego and people thinking they're better than each other, and they're not. And I see it daily, and it's disheartening, because there's people out there who are loving people. They're loving, beautiful people, and we have to accept it. And I think that's the problem with certain groups or individuals, is that they don't want to accept it because they're so stuck with that jadedness. And until they can get rid of it and learn. The funny thing too, Alan, is I've talked to people over time who've gotten to that point where they think they're ready to leave this life, and they're like 70, 80 years old. And it's almost like a confession. They tell me, I used to be like this. I'm not like that anymore. Well, why did you waste your whole life being like that to this point and realize now that you're not like that? Why would you not just accept, and you could have a whole beautiful life? And they sit there and they go, you're right, and tears are welling up, and they miss out on the beauty of life. And that's a sadness. There's a lot of people out there who just can't put that ego away, and they can't put that self-righteousness away, and they think they're better than everybody.
Yeah, it's tough. The whole hierarchy, the whole labeling of people put themselves in positions. I know. I see it all the time. So, so how do people get a hold of you if they want to give you some information or maybe pass on a haunted
stuff along?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
RobbieThomas.net. You can go there. There's tabs at the top of the page. I'm actually looking right now, and you can see contact Robbie Thomas, and there's a policy there. I know people want help, to help other families, and they say, can you reach out to this family? I don't ambulance chase. Police and the families call me all the time or write me. So there's a policy there. I don't take third-party information, and I don't give information about murder cases to third parties. It's only the immediate family and the police themselves. So that's just out of respect, because I've learned over the years that you do that and it just causes legalities and what have you. So the information's there. Contact Robbie Thomas, and I'm here to help people.
That's great. Well, thanks very much for taking this time, and we have a little talk, and perhaps we can do it again.
Absolutely.
The mission has been completed.
The end! By George, he's got it! It is the end!
I'll see you.
This has been a production of the Z-Talk Radio Network.
If you're lying to me, I'll be back.